Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this LIBER 2020 online keynote session. My name is Heli Kautonen and I'm the Library Director at the Finnish Literature Society. I'm also a member of LIBER Executive Board since last June. I'm chairing this session and in that role I give you some housekeeping notes before we get started. We'll be running live questions and answers after the session, after our keynote speaker has given her talk. While she is speaking, if you already have questions, feel free to send them through chat, the attendee chat that you can find from the left-hand side of your screen. I and the LIBER office help will be attentive to your questions and notes during our keynote speech. If we are running out of time or if you have to leave before we end, don't worry, we are recording this session and we'll send the slides to you after the session finishes. So here you can see the rules in written. Also, if you have technical problems, I think that you can add them to the chat and LIBER office may be able to help you with them, but otherwise we will just go on. And now I have the honor to present the keynote speaker of this 49th LIBER conference, Dr. Christine Koontz, who has pursued an impressive career and gained honors as a library and information science researcher and an inspiring educator at Florida State University. Many of us know her as a committed member of the global library community, mainly through her over 2 decades of activity in IFLA, or from her several publications on customer-based library marketing. Please, Christine, you can now have your camera on. In her keynote address titled True Marketing Defined, Christine Koontz will give us guidelines on how to market library and information services to our communities of stakeholders. On behalf of LIBER, I welcome you, Dr. Christine Koontz. The floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, Heli, and the staff and organizers of LIBER and commendations for carrying on this year and moving the conference from Belgrade into a virtual context. Very excited to be a part of it at any level. I was thinking back, my first presentation on marketing was to Florida reference librarians in 1989. And I thought, wow, if they could see me now. And I don't have on my pajamas, I promise. I really wanted to make sure I was awake. So welcome to each of you. And I'm especially excited to make this presentation during this time. I think that it's critical skill, marketing, and I hope that you feel the same or feel even more so at the end of the presentation. And I'd like to offer that you're welcome to email me at any time in your career if you have questions or about marketing. I'm happy to be a part of answering them. So especially during these changing times, even prior to the pandemic, marketing is a tried and true skill, and it provides evidence-based ways to connect with our customers, actual and potential, as well as just to consider solutions to problems as they come up. I want to say, first of all, and signify why I use the word customer instead of user. And it's simply because the concept of customer is one who has options, who makes choices, whereas the user tends to be categorized as user, actual, and then non user, which seems to typify something rather pathetic that has chosen not to, as opposed to potential customer who has the possibility to become a customer. So I hope that'll become more clear as we move along. I'm sorry about the glare in my glasses. I'll try to turn my head occasionally, but I won't be able to see what I'm talking about without them. So do forgive that. So all organizations are in an environment, whether you are a private entity, a public sector entity, a nonprofit, such as many libraries, archives, museums, all those collectively, which we now put into information organizations. And it's essential that we understand that environment, and we have to be proactive to take information in on a regular basis about all these categories. And we'll go through these today, believe it or not, but the outer two are those which are in the external environment. And we can assure that we're proactive by having that information to affect the two internal circles, which are how we develop our products and services and run our organization. So again, let's clear it up. What is marketing? Oh my, marketing is often given a bad rap, so they say, but it is something that a process that's systematic that you do over and over again. And it's a tried and true systematic planning approach for providing services and products to a consumer's wants, needs, and desire. And let's face it, in many urban areas, we're bombarded with marketing messages, up to 3,000 per day, from pencils to internet banners. But it does seem somebody's always trying to sell us something, but that's not really marketing. That's marketing promotion. So, marketing, as I just said, is the systematic process of identifying our actual and potential customers' needs, assessing whether we're doing a good job evaluation, and applying common sense. Because I assure you that I would not be here today for LIBER if it was not common sense at the base of it, because chemist I am not. And again, marketing is not selling, it's not advertising, it's not products and services, it's not about increased profit, and it's not strictly for business. True marketing, which I'm here today to define, involves evaluation, planning, it's data driven, and that data drives the product and service development, and the match identifies customer wants and needs. I love this Kotler definition. It's fairly old, but in a nutshell, it's marketing is getting the right products to the right people at the right place at the right time and with the right price and with the right communication and promotion. And for our side, it's definitely a human activity directed at satisfying needs and wants through an exchange process. McDonald's expects money. We expect to provide satisfaction and that exchange that entails. So before we even get into marketing, just know that you have to have a well-developed mission statement, and you have to have organizational level goals and objectives before you can even begin successful marketing. So we know, and mission statements, as most of us know, that mission statements have been around since the 80s. The other thing, vision statements kind of popped up in the 90s, but mission statements are our ally. They really drive the organization, and they must resonate with not only our customers and stakeholders, but also with staff. So again, the mission statement tells us who we are, our philosophy, core values. They're arrived at through consensus with our staff and through provide education. So guidelines are realistic, idealistic, and lofty, and don't promise anything you can't deliver. And think of it as a guide to the future. So again, these are the main components of mission statements, and they are not supposed to be redefined more than every 5 to 10 years because it's like a captain of a ship. If you're changing that steering wheel and your compass too often, it's confusing not only to the organization, but also to your customers. So these are some examples that I drew upon, knowing that many of you work for academic libraries. My work has largely been with public libraries, but sometimes with academic and now sometimes with museums and archives. But again, these are from 3 separate entities. And when I give examples throughout this morning's presentation, I'm not saying this is the best one, but it is a one for us to look at. So again, the bottom one is from London, the middle one from Washington in our country, and also from the organization that I work for by and large, Florida State. And as you can see, these are brief, and they should be. I run into long, paragraph-long mission statements all the time. And in fact, here's an example of one, which I've taken out the identifier. So you see the vision is looking like kind of what a mission should look for. Because remember, we want to communicate. We want to communicate who we are to our constituents, our stakeholders, our funders. And we know that folks more and more are not reading long, long messages. And again, I think that this on the bottom, and I've said this to my own university and my own school, that I think a lot of these mission statements should be edited and should be more brief and more concise for effectiveness. So once we have our mission down, and by the way, this will be available, the slides will be available. You're welcome to use the slides. Give me a little credit. Copyright matters, but please do feel free if they're relevant to you and of value to you to use them. So again, in this presentation, a goal is in general what you want to achieve. An objective is how the specificity of how you're going to go about achieving that goal. Objectives to be strong and relevant should be measurable. They should be quantified. Again, they should be a process or an outcome. They can have that component. Limit to one process or outcome for each objective, supported by a strategy, and keep them realistic. And I'd like to say, I do teach strategic planning sometimes at my university. It's not my favorite subject. Don't tell them. But I've done a good job, and strategic planning often involves this, the setting of the mission, the goals and objectives. I'm sure you've all been part of it, but the action plans are really often marketing. So here's an example drawn from the university culture and environment. A goal might be to foster a user-centered culture. In 2020-21, an objective might be to engage in 2 campus-wide studies of current and potential users or customers, as I defined at the beginning, of the library to better understand their research styles, needs, and behaviors. To use the data derived from these studies to better profile 3 customer markets and their needs. And another objective might be to develop and implement services to meet market needs and discontinue ineffective services. Remember, this is so key. Marketing is also critical to get rid of stuff that doesn't work. So if we were in a business class, which we're not today, we're here at LIBER, and we had a system of a semester-long system of study, we might have a 4, 5, 6 marketing model step. But today we have 4, which I think have worked really well for me throughout the decades and my students and my colleagues. So again, true marketing identifies the needs and wants of actual and potential customers within the mission and resources of the organization. Here's the marketing model I like to use, and it's presented in a linear fashion, although we know that marketing is fluid and also integrated, and many things are done simultaneously. And again, I hope that you'll appreciate the linear fashion presented in this morning. So here are the big steps we're going to go through today with examples and with an illustrative example that I hope is helpful. So step 1, marketing research, is often the step that few like to do, but is critical to the rest of it. It's the continuous acquisition and analysis of customer-related data that can answer important questions and solve problems. The most fun part of marketing, let me go back, excuse me, had to scratch my nose, is step 3, which is the marketing mix strategy, where you develop the product or service and develop the promotional messages. Let's face it, that's the most fun, that's creative. But in fact, these 2 steps have to be fully developed before we get to that one in order to be successful. So again, and you'll have full access to all the full text of the steps. I don't want to belabor each one by reading each one, but again, this process is something you begin to do over and over again. And as in the library and information field, this is something actually we are extremely good at. We are drawn to this profession because normally and usually we're curious, we like to solve problems, we're service oriented, and we like to come up with solutions. So we identify customer data, we figure out which methods of collecting the data is best, and remember, it's actual and potential customers. We figure out the way to manage and implement the collection processes. We analyze the results, and we present them to different bodies. We may present them to our staff, our customers, our funders, our university higher ups in budget battles. And again, it's planned and systematic. And I have given workshops on this one step alone. And so it's again, it seems awesome and a little daunting perhaps at first to some of us, but in the long run, the more you gather and the more you keep this up to date, the better. Environmental scanning is also part of this. And again, this is something, a technique you've heard about. It includes primary data, which is the most expensive because you have to start gathering it from scratch, as they say. Or you can rely on secondary data, data that you already have on hand. And it's good to use any relevant data that you have on hand because not only do you have it, but it's less expensive. So here we go back to our graph again. This is the kind of thing where in the olden days, you might be having put information in paper file folders, but that is no longer the case. We now have such a fluid manner of data collection, storming it into digital file folders and the ability to keep these up to date. Not the paper file folder of very old in a file cabinet, which I remember from my youth. I worked in a public library when I was in high school, and one of my jobs was to collect contemporary topics from magazines and newspapers and all kinds of paper stuff. So now, no excuse. We've got the digital forum by which to do it. So scanning the environments is knowing the specifics of the external environment that you operate within, and again, keeping up to date with the internal environment. This is what you hope to come up with, and it looks perhaps a bit detailed and overwhelming, but if you were to assign staff in your organization to keep up to date with any one of these that are relevant, you certainly wouldn't want to collect data on any that's not relevant to you. But I find by and large, most of these categories are relevant to our information organizations in the 21st century. And we'll get some good examples of these in a summary, even in today's short presentation. So to acknowledge the definitions as they're relevant to a university library, class level, age, language spoken, subject area, type of population, faculty or online student, the economy. Oh my, I can't think of anything more relevant to our university libraries and any type of other organization directly affects us, our suppliers, our vendors, our students, our faculty, our facilities, our funders, whether they be public funders at the government level or we're looking at grants from private funders, and geography as well. Social considerations, changing values and beliefs, customs. In the United States, we have very high standards at our university to respect and to authenticate diversity and cultural differences. The media, who can be our ally and should be our friend, the external as well as internal, what social media are our customers consuming, what other media, how do we target specific customer markets. We have to know what media they consume. We have to know this. We can't just send out blanket communications because they won't reach our target markets. Again, psychographics, what are the prevailing attitudes, opinions, beliefs, perceptions? Are our freshmen students intimidated by their concept of the library? Do we need to overcome that attitude? And then public policies, wow, those are our handmaiden, whether we may like it or not. And we better know about what these policies are and proactively know what might be coming down the pike to affect our organization. Technology, need I say more? Here we are. I have taught online for over 20 years. Our school was a forerunner in the United States, the School of Information at Florida State. And I also teach at San Jose State, which was also a forerunner in California. And folks have said to me, well, wow, I really admire you for keeping up with technology. And I always reply, my motto is fear the great motivator. I better keep up or I won't be in command of my classroom. And we and our organizations won't be in command of putting out our product and service to our students and faculty if we're not command of technology and keeping up with new innovations. 3D printers have come to the forefront during the pandemic as locally all kinds of technology has been produced to help local people during the time of the pandemic. The shields that are so effective now. I was saying earlier, our community has just passed a policy and an ordinance last night that masks will now be mandated. And I think we'll see more of these 3D printed masks. So competitive, we all have competition. Don't kid yourself. In the public library field, there may have been the chest beater. Well, our stuff is free. It's not free. There's always competition, and there's always a cost to the customer that we'll get to. So again, just to further this unique concept that I just mentioned, uh, it's rather new to some of us, but it's shouldn't be new because competition has been around for quite a while. The World Wide Web made its great presence known in 1994, but since then has never left the stage and continues to compete because we have Google, we have social media, we have popular mobile apps, which many of our students and faculty and customers use. We also have video games, and of course, as I said again, social media, which is our partner who's no longer silent. And remember, the concept and definition of competition is anything that can take away from your market share. Whether it's the Starbucks around the corner where the student feels more comfortable than being even in the Starbucks that's now in the library. They're competing spaces. And also other departments which can compete for the funds that fund your organization. For a public library, to make it really more graphic, it could be the sheriff or the police, recreation department that competes for the same public funds. In a university, the funds can go to any other department, any other facility. We all have to make our presentations to compete for budgets, and we need all the data that we can garner. So that's critical for us to begin to be proficient at gathering data for ourselves, just as we try to do such a good job for our customers. Let's collect that data for better management practices and for marketing. So the types of data sources are again, well known to us. In fact, when I sometimes might teach marketing research, these particular categories are mentioned in marketing research textbooks. And they still, to this day, even in our virtual environment, encourage students to go to libraries to find some of this information, because often we collect this for other entities who may use the university or other types of libraries. So remember, we're very fortunate because we're already familiar and know how to access a lot of these data sources. And again, I want to show you an example of this. I'm not going to read this, trust me. But these are really, and I'm presenting these not because, hey, I found the very best hot topic for university libraries and environmental scanning, information about COVID, COVID funding, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are affecting all types of library and information organizations all over the world. Response, how we're responding in our own country to some of the, in our own country, the conflicts that are affecting people who are immigrating, refugees, and asylum seekers, again, who in our country may be part of the DACA, the Dreamers. Yes, some of this is US oriented, but these same topics are affecting globally. Again, CARES funding is coming out for COVID responses, population growth, which affects every country all over the world and therefore affects our libraries. And again, demographic changes. So again, I present these today not as the sources, but examples of sources that I encourage you to keep up to date with for your own environment and own country or own global experience, as well as others. Because I decided to make a list of hot topics just for this presentation that I felt were critical at this point in time. But as we know, these change rapidly. we have a rapidly changing world. And so the systematic marketing approach can keep you in a stance of being proactive and ready to pounce and respond, especially to funding opportunities. So again, here's some others. Trends from the external scan, 5 library trends to watch. These were excellent and continue to be from DEMCO, makerspaces, Internet of Things, the knowing your community, which I'm all for, which is marketing, and then story doing, which is profiling and telling a story. This is more qualitative. I'm big on quantitative data, but I'm also inspired by the effectiveness that qualitative data can have on telling our story, and also the need for such in this day and time, but neither over one or the other. You still need hardcore data as well as your qualitative data. So again, this up-to-date ACR Research Planning and Review Committee, they have offered top trends in academic libraries. Some that they came forth with were data services now, because all and many entities need data, need help with data organization, and also professional development. Is a big thing, as you know, in our libraries, keeping our library and information professionals up to date. And then collection assessment. What are we actually holding on to? Much of now what we have are in digital formats, digital database formats. And again, we have to have student evaluation of learning. We have our librarians partnering with faculty to look at, evaluate content of academic curriculum. So the librarian and information professional can now be a partner in a vivid and valuable way with faculty in evaluation, and also partnering with grant and funding opportunities. So again, growing trends in academic libraries, valuing user experience, the customer as a fellow creator, and rethinking library spaces. These are all trends. And you know what? Tomorrow, there is perhaps going to be another trend. So by really assigning staff in your systematic marketing approach, find appealing areas in the environmental scan for staff members that they like, enjoy, have expertise and experience in. Here's some other noteworthy trends from a recent American Libraries. Just came out in June. Robots, they're not in libraries yet, but they're on the way. I can remember when Sweden had a robot that actually reshelved library books, and this was quite a while back. The Nordic folks are always way ahead of us, but we can mirror them and try to catch up. And then sustainability, a bottom line framework we can ask for anything that we do. Is it economically feasible? Is it socially equitable? Is it environmentally sound? We're now faced to meet the challenge of becoming a green library, meet the challenge of becoming an inclusive library, meet the challenge of not wasting money, of questioning products and services and programs that need to be eliminated. Systematic marketing can do that for you. It not only can help you develop new and effective products and services, it can help you get rid of those that are taking up space and expending funds that you don't have and need for new stuff. And again, confronting data bias, unmediated technology, making sure that everybody has a crack at the data that's available. Remember when the key word was data access? The group I was in, a geographic information system software unit I was in at the university for 16 years, we helped the Gates people distribute hardware throughout the United States in 1999 to every library in the United States, which frankly was about 16,000 public libraries in some schools. But guess what? We know now that just providing access isn't enough. We have to also provide benefit. We have to be there as a guide and a teacher to help explain and further what's in that virtual access, what's in that content. And we have to make sure that the content that we offer is ethically stored securely and anonymized, that privacy is such a consideration now. So again, we need to help users when they log on to certain vendors and have to give some of their personal information, that it's a good thing. And some librarians are giving a thumbs up and some are giving a thumbs down online to help users. And so all these things are happening now, and we're in the forefront. So now we're back to internal records. Oh man, do we collect a lot of internal records. We collect performance and service records, customer, member information, you name it, we have it. Budget, past projects, university planning documents. The strategic plan is essential for marketing. If it's done well, it can be critical. And evaluations and assessment. More and more libraries have an assessment librarian. I have colleagues at the University of Florida and Florida State University who serve in these positions. There was no such position much of my career in this field, and I and you welcome them, and some of you may serve in that position. So again, remember the key. Use the data you have first. It's also makes your data collection more relevant. You cannot collect certain data that you know isn't as useful. You can begin to weed your own data, if you will, and then take on more specific data collection that's more useful for the management and better and best practices of your organization. So again, look through all your data sources as part of this marketing experience. Try to find those that really answer the questions that you're asking, and then ask yourself, hey, we've got it, but can we get to it? Is it accessible? Is it available? And in your external sources, identify also which data is really relevant and which is worthy of your time to discover, and what barriers or challenges are there to external data sources that you need to overcome. And from all this, you've heard of the SWOT list. Everybody has. It's been around forever. But the fact is, it's really valuable when you really do your marketing research step, because the first two, strengths and weaknesses, are the internal aspects. They let you know if your staff is knowledgeable, technology and resources, and limited funds. These are all internally controlled. But the outside, the opportunities and threats, definitely come from your external scanning. So remember to look at these in detail a little bit later, because I see the clock ticking and I want to get to the other parts. So segmentation is the process of grouping people together by shared wants and needs. And this is very important because a market is a people who have stated interest in a particular product or service. For simplicity, it could be all your online users. But again, you can further segment your group, and I'll show you how to do that, because maybe the segment of online users doesn't tell you as much as you need to know about that market. And again, by the way, some of these buzzwords, we've been doing that for 100 years. I remember when I was in high school, one of my jobs was to take the mystery tape with the skull and crossbones, and I would cut that out and I would put that sticker on the spine of a mystery book. And little did I know later on that I was going to be practicing marketing segmentation. But we've gotten more fancy and more discreet, and there are many ways to segment markets now, and each of them can be very important. Uses, population characteristics, lifestyle, geography. And here is an example from the public library field, which is something that I was really strong on. And there was some pushback because, oh, you don't want to know where people live. You don't want to know too much about them. But the fact is, you don't know anything about it except kind of where they live. And it gives you a dispersion of your market around the library. So here for our purposes today is a combination segmentation, is class level, online curriculum, and demographics. This can help you know a great deal about your customer groups, and it helps you to provide more specific and better services and products. And stakeholders are people who have a vested interest in your organization. It takes very little to establish this list. You can sit down with your staff and think of all the people that are valued customers or valued people, such as administrators and deans, vendors, parents, even campus groups and organizations. You can market to them and let them know the latest about your services and products. I'm not going to read this. That would blow the rest of our time, but I hope you'll look at it later. But for this morning's purpose, remember that there are people who are stakeholders who will have a conflict of interest with your library. So keep that marketing data up to date. Keep that up to date. Use this graphic and make it into your new digital file folder. And summarize your environments, keep it up to date. And this again is here for your purposes for later on to show you what I do with all that information. I keep it on hand for budget, conflicts, funding opportunities, presentations to new faculty. And again, when I was doing this for this presentation, you know what I found? Is that the library piece here, I used an example library, not to be mentioned, really didn't have all the punch that it needed. But yet generally libraries are under pressure to make this type of data available. I have what it takes to know about the state, that the state is #1, the university is ranked highly, but the library itself, I don't have as much punch for marketing data. So I hope you'll take a look at this particular slide, number 49, put a star by that in your notes, and take a look at it later and see if you can come up with a good summary of environments for your library or information organization. So now we're ready to start marketing. We're really ready now. We've got the information we need. We can decide on which markets we're going to prioritize this coming year. And for this example, I've decided to use new students coming to campus, and the target market is going to be freshmen, and they're going to be somewhat intimidated by using a university library. They probably barely use their high school library, and they're just flat intimidated being on campus. But they know they need assistance on how to use research guides and to use the library. So we've decided to focus on them. So the marketing mix strategy is the fun part, where you get to develop a product, you get to deliver it at the least cost to your customer, that intimidated freshman. The place will be on campus at the library, and you're going to have to figure out what media this group consumes. And again, then you're going to have to evaluate what you did for them to find out if you were successful. This is one of my favorite examples. It's a camel mobile. It was actually done by Kenyan professors who recognized that school children in rural villages were not being well served. So they implied the marketing mix. They got tents, they got books, they got camels from the 6 villages, and they set up the tents, delivered the books, and it's still running now, decades later, because they developed an evaluation component and found out how many children were served that had never been served, and they kept getting more money and more books. 20 years later, Google Camel Mobile, also Google Donkey Mobile. So here's the marketing mix strategy. You hear about this all the time, the 4 Ps: product, price, place, promotion. Well, it really does mean something. It really does. A product, we are loaded with products, libraries of all people. We have goods, we have services, we have the person, the librarian, and we have the place. We have it all, and yet we often don't market it all. Price, we often get mixed up. We think, well, how much is it costing me to provide this service to the customer? Nope. Marketing point of view, it's how much it costs the customer. Is it too much wait time, too much inquiry? Is the speed of assistance too slow? We live in a fast world now. Posting time, reading time, privacy. Are we interfering with their privacy? We see that's a new trend. We're going to have to worry about that on these virtual databases. Travel time. How long does it take that intimidated freshman to get to the library on campus? The place, one of the oldest places. So remember this, that these all count, and theory of place, where your place is located. We know that some universities are questioning the enormous cost of library facilities on campus. We have to prove our worth with the data of visits and provision. So again, we have to prove this on virtual time as well. And promotion, this is the heart of what we think of as marketing. It's always confused with marketing, but it's only a tool. You can see that now. We have research and segmentation, and to get that promotional tool, we have to target our audience. And we have all these different media and tools to work with that are at our disposal. But let me say it in a nutshell. Unless we know which market we're communicating to, all is lost. All is lost. And this applies to social media too. You don't want to just have a lot of pages just to say you have them. They have to be monitored, they have to be evaluated, and they have to be targeted. And so again, promotional tools have to be chosen for your target market. Here's some trends about promotion. This is part of your environmental scanning. What are the hot trends in promotion? What can you garner? So again, it says make sure you're mobile, you have a lot of content, it's personalized, but who are you sending it to? It doesn't do any good to know about a trend if you don't know who your markets are and who you're prioritizing. You can't prioritize everybody every year. You have to have an excellent strategic plan from the university, then from the library, that then gets to you and your unit and department so you know who to target. So here is a quick view of that new freshman. We know that we're going to target them, and our objective is to increase their awareness of the library and of our guides. And it's going to be the new freshmen entering next year. So we have time to get our marketing together. And we're also going to develop a social media program level plan. And we've got the same goals and objectives. Remember, they have to be measurable and they have to be, targeted. So here's an example of a social media evaluation, just like the program. And here's the scenario. You can come back to this, put a star on PowerPoint number 73. I've asked you only to star 2. And I think this will be very useful to show you how you put the marketing mix strategy into effect based on your marketing research and segmentation. So we've come to evaluation, and this is critical, and I've made it simple because you've got to have evaluation in everything you do now. And hopefully you have a group at your organization who has evaluation in place, or a librarian or a system that helps you achieve your objectives. If you don't, then I suggest that you and your staff brainstorm every single thing that you can measure, like how many freshmen are there? How many freshmen signed up for any of your research workshops? How many actually participated? How many came back? And then have a customer service survey. Hey, what did y'all get out of this? Are you less intimidated coming to the library? And then set objectives. So you see that evaluation can be very simplified. The most important thing is to do it. I am a big fan of the 3-question questionnaire. You can do it at any level. You can do it to those coming into the library. You can do it for a certain program, and you'll have some data in hand that you didn't have before. It's better to have any data than no data. As you can see, we've had a quick tour of marketing this morning, but the point I really wanted to make is that true marketing is all these 4 steps. It's not just promotion. It's not the boss's great idea. It's some homework for sure, but it can be done, and it can be done in a cyclical and systematic method. Our book, which we have done, it's out. We're coming out with a 2nd edition in December of 2020. Despite the pandemic, we did it. But it has a lot of great examples. And again, our 2nd edition, we've moved Dr. Mon, who is a social media expert. We've moved her to the front. Got to get the new generation going here. And I hope that you'll take a look at it if you wish. And again, more than anything, though, I hope now you'll ask me some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine Koontz, for your very inspiring and encouraging. Can you hear my voice? Yes, you can. Inspiring and encouraging talk, and also relevant. If we were in an auditorium, there would be the room would be echoing with applause. Keep them floating on the screen, please, while I'm opening the floor to questions and answers. And we already have 3 questions here, and I will post them to you, Christine. Yes, keep them coming, keep them coming. I'm scrolling up to the first question from Robin Rice. I think Robin is from UK, if I'm not mistaken. Her question is, regarding the external environment scan, is this similar to a pestle analysis? PESTLE analysis.
I have to say I'm not familiar with it, Robin, but I'm sure that it is if it involves any kind of external scan. It can have different acronyms for sure. You know, some are promoted by organizations like OCLC, you know, has their big scan every year. I'm not sure what, or every other year, what acronym they call it, but it's definitely gathering pertinent and relevant information from the categories, perhaps that I suggested. Maybe PESTLE is more specifically targeted to your type of environment. And it's certainly been around for decades. But it's interesting because it's becoming invariably much more critical in this speeded up environment that we're in, where so many things are changing day to day. Like in January, who would have thought all of us would be here, and that we would be operating our organization and achieving our goals and outcomes within a pandemic? And then certainly in the United States, this is our election year, as well as we've had the uprising and the Black Lives Matter. So all these things are affecting each of our organizations and how we operate and our outcomes and our goals and objectives have changed.
Thank you. Then again, another question from Sem Özel from Istanbul, Turkey. Really relevant question. It was very easy to promote our printed resources, but how can we promote our electronic resources during pandemic? Are there any good examples?
Okay, well, I think, and certainly I don't know what the situation is in Turkey. I'm sure it's very different than it is in the United States. So forgive me for not having full knowledge of your environment. I think in our country, in some ways, because I said at the beginning of the lecture that I've been online teaching for 20 years at our School of Information. We were way ahead, and then suddenly the whole world is online, even down to kindergarten and elementary school, even to presidents and state governors, politics. Everybody now has joined us, and I feel confident that electronic resources, the value that they have had during this global period of the pandemic, are going to give them illumination and much more value than we could have ever considered. Last night, I'm a volunteer story hour. I did a story hour for one of my students who's now a professional in Taiwan because she had an elementary school class on Zoom to do storytelling. So the challenges for all are really difficult and extreme. And I think you've got a bird in the hand, as they say, because in fact, the environment is electronic. And I think you can segue then to those things that you already had that were available. And perhaps these will, I think more often people will turn to electronic resources as a global entity, have become more familiar with them.
And I think that you, Christine, displayed some channels because Sem asked about good examples, and I think you had them in your presentation. One note from Robin Rice, Pestle, I've been familiar with this. This is this acronym stands for Political, Economic, Social, Technological, Legal, and Environmental Factors. And I think that as you said, Christine, the method is, you can choose a method as long as you cover the different aspects. And at least myself, I can see the similarities between Pestle and what you suggested. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then a question from Sarah de Costa, and if I correct, she's from Belgium. I liked your recommendation not to make promises we cannot keep. How can we make sure a marketing strategy is credible? She was thinking particularly about the relationship between strategy and missions versus goals to achieve. And she tells about the user-driven library. Library may have the attitude to be user-driven, but the users are not, they don't feel very included yet at the moment the library says so. So her question is how to make sure that the marketing seems also realistic for users and customers and not only for librarians.
Okay, excellent question. Certainly, marketing research is the key to this dilemma, because on the surface, sometimes not just libraries, but many organizations will develop a product or services because they think it's exciting. They want to, they're sure it will be a big hit. And there are examples of these in the private sector. The big one was when Coke developed a new product called I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, it was some funny tasting Coke and it was a big bomb and all the money was wasted. So marketing research allows you to absolutely get to know your actual and potential customers and to understand their needs and wants. And again, this is within the mission of the organization and the resources. Like, you don't want to ever develop anything that you can't afford to offer, just as much as you don't want to develop anything that's not needed or wanted. So you're going to have to do your research with your actual or potential customers to really discover what their needs are, and also eliminate programs and services that are just going along, which aren't needed or wanted. So the key is to include them, include customers in your discovery process, having focus groups, which is qualitative research. Let's say it's the it's the example, it's the freshman coming in the fall. Let's say you have a focus group of those who come in to school early. At our school, they are still going to come to campus, but there are some who are going to only come virtually. Uh, Go with those students, checking out their feelings, what it is they're looking for from the library, presenting to them what the library has, seeing what they're interested in, what they're not interested in, really doing your homework. Marketing is about doing your homework. It's not about falling in love with your own ideas and then running with them or letting the boss talk you into his or her big idea. It's really getting the data together and seeing what users are using, what's successful and what's not. And not everything's going to be a home run the first time. It won't be. There will be things that you'll need to discard. But doing that research is key. It won't be a waste of time.
We are a couple of minutes over the time, but I will still continue. I hope that you can stay online, others too. There is a comment from Tiina Heino. I know from the name that she is from Finland. She says, great talk. Market research is so crucial. Confirming what you just said, creates confidence in our customers. We care and have genuine interest in their needs. This is also, for me, it's familiar from not only from marketing, but UX, user experience research, that is also based on research. But then a couple of questions still. From Peter Hickey, greetings from Ireland. His question is actually similar that I had prepared for you, and I'm really happy that someone else also asked it. For many libraries, marketing is often disjointed and delivered at a unit level. Have you a sense of an appropriate staffing model for effective marketing?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Peter, that it's often, well, for example, I'll just pick on libraries. A library might be very excited and hire someone who's not really a librarian, but they're hired for the marketing position, and that person ends up doing all the promotional materials, the annual report, ends up doing invitations to special events, and then the whole misnomer of marketing is in fact created, because marketing, that is only the promotional and communications piece. Their true marketing would be to have a department in which they gather data from all the units and work with the units to explain why they're gathering that data and what it will be used for, and are a part of perhaps assigning data gathering from the environmental scan or the pestle model. Get people involved so they're participating. I think an initial way, and oh good, I'm so glad you asked that question, because I have made exercises available which you can download and will be given to you if you'd like to use with your staffs that go along with this. And I can help you do that better if you contact me. I'll tell you where to intersperse the exercises. And if you want me to be a part of it, I've done that too. I don't mind, now that we're all online. But definitely, you know, the whole SWOT exercise, for example, that can be in the staff lounge. And that could be an introit into letting staff know this is a piece of marketing, this is a marketing activity. And then also getting them involved with any of the, you know, response to the customer survey that you might give out to all who come in the library. You know, I love the 3-question survey, like to everybody. Let's just say, for example, and you could refine this. This is just for the moment, but hi, greetings. Why did you come to the library today? You know, 2. How often do you come to the library? 3, when they're leaving, what did you find that was valuable from the library today? You know, you can change this up, but if you keep it to 3 questions, you'll always get the answers. It's amazing because people are, you know, they're ready, but 4, 5, they're too big a hurry. But I say get the staff involved early with the environmental scan, with the SWOT, with the data collection, also with their opinions and ideas, because this is where it's at. It has to be dispersed. One unit can't do marketing for an organization. It has to be like a spider web throughout. And then the effects and the rewards of marketing will be considered, and then the hard work won't fall on just one person. And then you can have that great graphic artist to do the promotion, the communication, and it's not kidding everybody that they're actually doing marketing.
Thanks. One more question which also relates to data and collecting data and so on. I know that we would like to hear much more about your advice for evaluation of the data and so on. Unfortunately, we don't have time for that, but this one more question to close the question and answers time. Many people who have to leave just keep the applause floating on the screen. But Anita Elfisen, I just checked, she is from Denmark. Thank you very much for your most inspiring talk. She sees that data-driven marketing is exactly what is this is about. But her question is, but I often find that as much potential data we may have about our customers, the access to said data can be a real challenge, even internally in the library. Do you have recommendations on the 3 or 5 most important key indicators which should be collected and shared internally in a library?
This is just an excellent question. Thank you for letting us finish up, because this is the heart of marketing, of true marketing, is the data and the data collection. And I can say, and the data access, because often librarians and staff are collecting data that they never see. They're collecting data that they don't know what the purpose is for the collection of the data at any level. And I think with the establishment of these positions of assessment and evaluation librarians, that we're finding that they, by training and skill, are able to make the data available and accessible for more and more applications. Because, for example, the 3 to 5 most important key indicators could change with each project. Let's say you have an opportunity for grant funding for something very specific, and you find that you need data about your students or faculty who are using the library that is very different for this project. And so the database needs to be accessible not only by the assessment and evaluation librarian, but maybe providing access to others. Or have them help you to format it. So it is a process. And I think that if you go back to that one slide, I said, please make an asterisk on, you'll see the weakness there in my description for the library in the summary of environments. And that's because I didn't have access, and there wasn't any marketing data that I could find. and I don't think the library had it either. And so I think that this has to be an effort to develop marketing data for library and information organizations. Use the data you have and then get the data you don't have. You're really right on it. I hope I had a good answer. It's possible, though, is my answer. We need it. We should be doing it.
Yeah. So I know that we would have many other questions, and thank you for sharing the information of your publications, and we'll surely the ones who didn't get answers can refer to them. Thank you so much, Christine Koontz, waking up for us to share this all you've gathered in your career and your experiences. Keep the applause floating on the screen. This is a great thanks to you.
Thank you, and cheers. Here's my coffee cup. It has tea in it, actually. It's only 6 o'clock here. What am I going to do the rest of the day? I'll find something.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the lively audience, active audience.
Thank you to the audience, and thank you to Heli and the staff and the organizers of LIBER. Thank you so much.